we're talking to Congressman Ron Paul about how he thinks Barack Obama is doing and other burning issues concerning the United States and the rest of the world. Congressman Paul, thank you so much for joining us. A grade A to F for Barack Obama in these 100 days.
Oh, I think his rhetoric's pretty good. His economics are lousy. I think his rhetoric on foreign policy is helpful, but it remains to be seen because he actually increased the DOD budget by 9%, so he can't be very sincere about really bringing our troops home. And I think with the violence escalating in Iraq, he's not going to be able to fulfill his promises, although I think his tone is much better, and I think it's beneficial.
It seems that some of Barack Obama's economic policies have kind of divided the nation, and now there's talk of secession. I'm speaking, of course, about Governor Rick Perry's recent remarks that Texas might secede from the Union. What do you think about those statements, and is this at all likely to happen?
I think that was pure politics. He wasn't serious about secession, but he did mention it as a principle, and I think it's a worthy principle because I think that in a free country you should have the right to leave. If you came into the Union voluntarily, you should be able to leave. But that's been long forgotten. Long time ago, over the Civil War, they virtually canceled that out. But I support the principle that you should. In the United States, I think endorses the principle because that's how we formed our country. We essentially seceded from England. And we've been delighted with the secession of the republics around Russia. When they seceded from the Soviet Union, we expressed a lot of support for that. So the principle of secession is good. And I would like to maintain this because if it becomes too expensive for us to be in the United Nations and the votes are going against us, we ought to have the right to leave, and that's a form of secession.
What do you think about the reaction, especially from the liberal media, calling him a traitor, using inappropriate remarks sometimes? What do you think about that reaction?
Well, those are the people who love and are endeared to powerful central governments, and it means that they see that as a threat. They want to hold people together and under their thumb by force, and that, of course, contradicts the whole notion of a free society.
Now, moving over to foreign policy, we're hearing talk from Washington that it wants to reset relations with Moscow. How can we turn that rhetoric into reality, taking into consideration the issue of ABMs, the issue of NATO expansion, things that are very sensitive to Moscow?
We just have to hope and see that this softened approach that this administration has followed is going to follow through with it. I think there is a chance, but there's still a lot of noise coming from the administration, especially when it comes to Pakistan and Afghanistan. So we have to keep our fingers crossed, but it's certainly the language is much better. I think there's a better chance now than there was in the last administration, and I think that is good. But to say that all of a sudden this policy is going to change dramatically, I think it's too early to tell.
And speaking about change in policy, can you comment on the NATO exercises in Georgia that are supposed to take place in early May? There's already bad blood between Russia, the U.S., and NATO. Is this going to exacerbate tensions? I mean, why is the United States spending so much money and effort in that region?
And you're right to say the United States because NATO is the United States, and that's our policy. I think it's a wasted money, especially since we don't have any. We have to borrow that from the Chinese in order to go and do these things to pay and pretend it's a NATO operation. So I think that is just antagonistic. I strongly oppose it. I don't even think we belong in NATO. I think if they need a pack of countries in Europe, they should do it, but not with our help. Because my position is we ought to even, not only should we back off from moving in that direction of getting involved in the countries and republics that's very close to the Russian border, I think we should leave Europe, and we'll have to, just like the Soviets had to break up their system for financial reasons. Eventually, the United States will have to do the same thing, and that's why I've always been preaching that the best way to follow fiscal conservative views is to change our foreign policy and not spend so much money just getting ourselves into more trouble.
Now, another burning issue in foreign policy right now, the issue of pirates really coming to the forefront recently. You seem to have an age-old solution on how to confront those Somali pirates. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's an age-old in the sense that it's a couple hundred years old, but it contradicts the really old-age solution is that when violence occurs, people want to go to war, and they expand the problem. What I want to do is prevent the very old-age solution of invading Somalia and solving these problems. So the the process that I'm advocating is to look at our Constitution, which advocates letters of marque and reprisal, which gives limited power or deputizes the people who are in danger, that is the ship owners and the ship captains, so that they can carry weapons and defend themselves. It's pretty silly to think that 4 or 5 teenagers or young men can take over a huge vessel worth hundreds of millions of dollars and they don't even put up a fight. That's what we used to do for terrorists taking over our airplanes. If it was a hijacking, the pilots were not allowed to have guns and you weren't allowed to resist. And look what it led to. Same way with these ships. They should have at least a sanction. The government said, yes, you are allowed. It's up to you to defend yourselves. Don't depend on the United States Navy to patrol every ocean lane in the world. That's impossible. We can't do it practically and we can't do it monetarily.
So you're advocating switching the burden from taxpayers to these private companies?
That's right. Instead of doubling the size of our Navy, which some people are suggesting, what we're saying is you take the responsibility on yourself, and we're not going to hold you, in contempt of the law. That right now it's against the law to come into our port if you happen to have a gun. But if they had guns, I think the pirates would think twice before they take on these projects.
Now switching over to someone who is no longer in power, Condoleezza Rice, you have grilled her before on policy, and now a Senate report reveals that she actually gave the CIA the early go-ahead for waterboarding. Now the Obama administration, of course, saying that that is torture. What do you think about this report and of Condoleezza Rice in general?
I advocate full evaluation, investigation, find out who's responsible for us breaking international law and defying what America stands for. So if she is responsible for that, we need to find out, and then the penalty should be determined then.
What do you think of the policy that she implemented during the Bush administration? Did it serve to harm the United States or help the United States in terms of foreign policy?
I think it undermined our foreign policy. We've lost a lot of credibility. We haven't built friends. We have spent a lot of money antagonizing a lot of people, and we have gotten ourselves involved in many wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, now Pakistan. We threaten Iran, and to me, it has not built up our prestige one bit. And from a very practical viewpoint, I think it's been part of the contributing factor to our bankruptcy. At the same time, I think we're less safe. We're not more safe, because we're not living in the Cold War when weapons meant everything. We're living in an age where if you incite hatred against us, you incite these terrorist hate groups to be formed, and then you're always vulnerable from that.